Welcome to the Practice Squad podcast, episode 12. I'm John. I'm joined by my co host, Mark. And this was, I think, the most upset so far. I know week 2 is pretty big, but a lot of favorites lost this week, and it does reflect in our predictions records. I guess we were getting too cocky, and we need to get humbled down a little bit. I went 6-8 for this week. Mark went, 8-6.
Yeah.
So, I guess we're kissing goodbye our 12 correct guesses per week from the past few weeks here. And we got to get back to the drawing board a little bit. How you doing, Mark?
Good, John. I mean, it is what it is. It could be worse. I mean, we could be fans of like the NBA. I mean, before coming on this, I was watching like the NBA is starting tonight. For those that like both football and basketball, but holy cow, that league is garbage, man. I mean, it's just gone to shit, the NBA. So thank God that we're not diehard NBA fans and that this isn't an NBA podcast.
It shows in their viewership too, from what I remember, right? Like, hasn't their
Well,
ratings gone down like 4 years
yeah, I
straight
mean,
or
you have
something
like
like that?
you have superstar players that have basically become more powerful than any coach, than any owner, than anything like that. And then you just have, and I hope to God the NFL never has this problem. And I think because the teams are so big, we
I
won't.
don't think they ever will. Yeah.
But I mean, when you give the players full control of everything, and this is what happens. I mean, you have guys that miss seasons, that take games off because whatever they need a night off. Like, I mean, if this is your job, I mean, people save up money and buy a ticket to go watch LeBron James play, and he doesn't play because he has a sore toe. Like, it's just unbelievable. And the league, you're right, the viewership of it reflect what's happening in the league, and really no one watches it or gives a shit until playoffs anyway. It's watered down. It's not as competitive, not as aggressive as it used to be, and it's showing. So back to football.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say though, this is a fun time of the year just because like there are sports on every day. And
Every
it's
day.
like if you want to watch baseball, NBA, hockey, football, like there is something to watch in October every single day. And I am grateful for that, regardless of the fact that I don't really care much for the NBA. I haven't paid attention to baseball. I do loosely pay attention to hockey, but yeah, no, football is just it's in a league of its own. And I've stressed this so many times that the NFL has truly perfected its product that we are tuning in for just about every game that we can watch. Most football fans are just as crazy as we are too. Like it just truly is an incredible sport that's always engaging, always feels like there's an underdog trying to make it. The parity in the league is insane. The talent in the league is ridiculous, and no one player can really put, an entire organization on his back in the way that you kind of can see with hockey and NBA especially, and even baseball in some regards. So um, and I guess that's the benefit of, essentially having 22 starters, not including special teams, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's every single player has a role, in football, and that's the best thing about that sport is it's like, I mean, you hear it all the time. It's the ultimate team sport, but like it really is, and it's at all levels. Like, you have one really good player in basketball and you can win. But if you can't just win with one really good player in football, you need a core group of guys, and then you need role players, you need linemen, you need big guys, you need athletic guys on the outside, you need a smart quarterback who can make plays. Like, there's a lot of things you need to compete in the NFL.
yeah,
So
and even if you do have like an absolutely dominant shutdown player, they're only on the field 50% of the time.
right,
It's like, I mean, I can't. There's a few phenomenal examples of this with Denver having an absolute shutdown defense, top 5 in the league in just about every metric you can measure, and they can't score points. And conversely, the Lions have had one of the most productive offenses in the league, and their defense literally can't stop the other team from scoring points to save their life. So, yeah, it's a beautiful sport. That's probably why we spend way too much time watching it and getting heated about stuff and paying attention to all the headlines. But the NFL is perfected in keeping us engaged with all of that. So, with that fun intro and showing our fandom, let's hop into the game recaps from week 6. So we had Commanders versus Bears, which somehow was even harder to watch than Denver versus Indy the previous week. If I'm Jeff Bezos, I'm kind of upset right now personally. Like I would think that, he's like, man, am I going to make a return on my investment here? He will. It'll be fine. but I think
He'll be
most
fine.
NFL fans are pretty displeased with the way the quality of football we have been subjected to for
Well,
this
even
league.
even the broadcast team is like, what do we talk about here? Like, what do we do? I mean, they're running out of things. Like Kirk Herbstreit's running out of things to side notes and things to say. The Bears, listen, we know we said it a few podcast episodes ago. They might not win another game. Justin Fields, Justin Fields is getting a lot of hate and a lot of credit for the struggles. But he, in my mind, has shown some things that he's going to be able to do as he continues to grow and progress as a player. I think he's actually going to be a pretty good NFL quarterback for a long time. He's on a bad team and he's not getting a lot of help, but he's putting the ball in some impressive spots. He's using his legs. He's a better runner than I thought he was, seeing what he's able to do in open field. And then, I mean, Carson Wentz is still as bad as this was lucky. I mean, it was a muffed punt that really is the only reason they were able to win this game. I mean, otherwise, I don't know if either team was going to score. But yeah, I mean, two bad teams. Washington got out of there with a win. Again, they're a team that's going to struggle to find another win, and the Bears are going to struggle to find another win. So we were watching that. We knew going into it what it was going to be, and if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
And I do have to agree with you. Like, I mean, I'm not fully sold on Fields being like a long time NFL quarterback, but what I will say is that I have to give him the benefit of the doubt because his offensive line cannot block for him and gives him zero time in the pocket. And that's hard enough if you're an experienced quarterback to work with. But the dude's in year two. I mean, we saw, the difference that an offensive line made to Joe Burrow his first year, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he had a very unproductive 3 or 4 games or whatever he had, and then he tore his ACL. So it's just you cannot be a productive quarterback in the NFL if you cannot have time in the pocket and protection. That's as simple as that. So I won't torture our viewers with any more recap about that snooze fest of the game. But Commanders do come away with a win. Moving on to 49ers Falcons, I personally was unable to watch this one, but obviously very surprised at the scoreboard. Mark, I don't know if you were able to catch this one, and what's your diagnosis if you were?
I didn't see a lot of it. I saw highlights and clips of it. Really, I think it's just kind of one of those trap game type situations where San Francisco went into this game probably feeling pretty good about the last couple wins that they had. Atlanta is a team that's going to scratch and claw and fight no matter what. They're used to being in these tight ball games, and honestly, they just kind of made enough plays to keep the lead that they had, and San Francisco just struggled to do what they wanted to do offensively. And honestly, what this shows is the 49ers, like, as good as they are in terms of running the ball, play action, playing good team defense, and complementary football, if they're not able to kind of get an early lead in the game, similar to like the Ravens, which I know you're going to get into when we get down to that game, if they're not able to get an early lead and do exactly what their game plan was, they're going to struggle. Like when they're trying to play from behind and when teams do things that they didn't expect to happen, they're not the best from behind football team. And Jimmy G struggles to kind of bring those guys back. And Atlanta got up and just did enough to kind of manage and limit what they wanted to do. And as that time continued to tick, I mean, San Francisco ran out of options, ran out of, things that they could do. So that's kind of what happened from what I saw. And that concerns me about the 49ers because in the playoffs, you never know what's going to happen in a game. You can't go down and just be done, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I got to give credit to Atlanta. I did not have high expectations for them this season. And on top of that, if it wasn't for essentially one play, they would be number one in their division right now. So that's impressive, and I think their ability to kind of give it to every team that they go against is pretty awesome. Moving on to Patriots Browns, which I did catch. I mean, I was not expecting this dominant of a performance, and I really have to give just a ton of credit to Bill Belichick because their roster is not great, and it's looking pretty depleted in the first place. People making fun of Bill about his draft pick for Cole Strange, playing their third man as at quarterback, and they just had a dominant game. Doing kind of standard Patriot football of just crushing it defensively, absolutely, swarming their opponent, and then obviously having like a really good offensive showing too, right? So super impressed. I mean, Bailey Zappi might be the starter going forward, and that's crazy. So
Is it Zappy time in New England?
I think so. I
It
think they're going
might
to
be
start zapping.
it might be Zappy hour in New England. Like I don't know. I kind of had a good feeling about him being a good prospect coming out of Western Kentucky. He shattered records at Western Kentucky. Shattered, I mean, Division I football passing records, like some unbelievable numbers that he put up. And you don't do that by accident. And obviously, he had the talent to do it. You put a guy like that in the right system, who, with a team that plays complementary football around him, and it's the perfect situation for a quarterback coming into a new situation, just like they did with Tom Brady way back when. I mean, they put him into a good situation. Tom Brady wasn't anything great yet. He just was in a perfect situation, and he grew into what he is now. Bailey Zappi does things better than Mac Jones. I think it's fair to say that he deserves the chance to continue to start, because he's looked better than Mac Jones. And Mac Jones has looked good at times, but he has never looked great. He's just game managed enough for them to win. Bailey Zappi is game managing and doing a little bit more than I've seen Mac Jones do so far in the league. I understand it's a short stint, but it might be Zappi hour for a while in New
Yeah.
England.
And it's so interesting because so many people are drawing those parallels to, Brady, low expectations, replacing the first round draft pick, and, the rest is history. And obviously, significantly too early to say that history is repeating itself or anything of the sort here. But it is crazy. And it's also hilarious that Mac and Bailey do look shockingly alike.
Dude,
And I think it's funny that it's like, all
Mac
right,
is
like,
just a fatter, DUI ridden version of Zappi. That's all Mac is.
what is there something I don't know about
Mac
Mac
Jones
Jones
has
off
a
the field?
DUI.
He
Yeah,
does?
he does.
I did not know that, and that's
He likes to have a
surprising.
couple pops and drive.
Yeah, a couple brewskis. That's
Yeah.
we do not condone that here on the Practice
No.
Squad
So
podcast, and that's surprising from a guy of like his general stature in the Belichick
well, I mean,
organization,
you've seen
honestly.
his
So
beer gut, right? I mean, the guy can pound beers.
he is definitely for a starting NFL quarterback. He's a little chubby, but a
Yeah,
little
there's some
pudgy.
not so great pictures of him at Alabama celebrating with his shirt off. Uh, wouldn't
Man,
know he's a starting quarterback, but oh well, he's not a starting quarterback anymore. But
Mac, you don't deserve all of the heat that we just threw
he
your way
might he
there.
might
But
deserve it. I mean, he drove drunk
that's
and
true.
he's lost his starting spot. So yikes,
Wow,
yikes.
man,
Sorry,
we're
Mac.
just a hater podcast, I guess, but that's
I
fine by
am, and
me,
I just kind of
honestly.
bring you into it. Listen, John is not as negative as I am, and I
Not
think I
nearly. I'm an
rub off.
optimist to a fault, but
I'm making you a terrible person.
that's fine. I kind of need a little bit of that in my life, honestly. Um, moving on to Packers Jets, I'm sure nobody saw that coming, and like, man, I just have to think that the Jets truly like might have actually put it together this year and are actually becoming a team. I think Bob Saleh's the right coach for them. They have loads of young talent and I think quite a few draft picks to work with in the future here. I mean, they're building a team over there. Like, yes, the Packers are struggling and we're definitely going to get into how and why the Packers are struggling right now. But like,
Mhm.
the Jets pulled up to Lambeau and beat the Packers. That I don't care who you are and how good the season that the Packers are having. That's definitely a pretty significant win to take home. And I was thoroughly impressed with the way they played that game. They shut down the Packers offense. They were
Yeah.
very efficient themselves offensively. It was a wild game to watch.
Well, I mean, we know Zach Wilson can handle 40-year-old women, so going in against a 40-year-old man, he had no problem. He seems to swing both ways, I guess. But listen, he looked better than Aaron Rodgers, and we've had issues with the Packers, John. We've said it every episode. Like they have all the pieces, they're not clicking, and the chemistry's off, and it showed. And my shout out is to Sauce Gardner as my big balls player of the week for the defensive side of the ball, because he went in there, played a really good game against some good receivers, obviously shutting down Aaron Rodgers in the passing game. And he had a kind of a pissed off mentality. And I think it was contagious throughout the Jets team. And I didn't know this, but I saw him after the game. I guess when you go and play in England, like Green Bay did last week, you get to pick whether you want to buy or you get to pick who you play. on your schedule that next week.
Wow.
So they picked the Jets, and he did not mince words. He's like, they picked us. They thought they had a cakewalk. They thought wrong. And he was walking around the field with the cheese head on his
With the
head.
cheese head on.
I
Yep.
mean, so that's like a pissed off, like, hungry mentality that I think is contagious through that locker room. And it's showing. I mean, the Jets are doing things that no one thought they'd do. And they really do look like a team that could compete in that division a little bit. Obviously, it's a hard division with the Bills, but, you know,
And the Dolphins and the
the
Pats
Dolphins,
are doing
it's a
better
good
than
division.
expected.
It's
It's
a
a
good
crazy
division,
good
but man,
division.
the Jets at 4-2. I mean, something's happening in New York that we're not used to seeing with them and the Giants doing so well. So,
Definitely.
um,
And also quickly, just standard mishap with me not following or planning procedures properly. Bailey Zappi is my offensive player of the week. I didn't realize we were doing that as we were recapping the game. I was thoroughly impressed with how he played. Being a rookie, second starting job, that was crazy impressive. So giving that shout out, he was my offensive player of the week. And shifting focus to the Packers too. I mean, they're just not clicking offensively. And I don't know if it's going to get better because Aaron Rodgers saying, "Oh, we need to simplify the offense," and Matt LaFleur's like, "I don't know what Aaron Rodgers is talking about." They're struggling to play Aaron Jones, give him enough, carries a game, which I think is a huge problem because that dude tends to make good things happen when he gets the ball.
that's been
The
a problem for years in Green Bay.
Yeah, and the
It's
receiving core is super depleted. Like it's not looking great offensively for
no,
them, and I don't know if
but I
there's a quick fix or a quick solution
I
here.
think they'll figure it out, John. I do, and I don't know if they'll win 12 or 13 games, but like they're going to be a playoff team, and they'll win the division, and they'll have a real chance to win some playoff games and make a run like they always do. I can't see them not figuring it out. I think they will. Um,
Mark, I don't disagree with you, but you can't just say shoe in. They're going to win the division with the Vikings 5-1, and I know that we're 2 games away from covering that one, but like they actually have to claw their way back to being in that position. And you're right. I'm sure they will figure it out. You don't have a guy like Aaron Rodgers at the helm, and don't figure it out at some point in the season. Got to wait until it's turtleneck weather, and then he's unstoppable. So we'll see what happens in the
we'll
latter
see.
half of the
We'll
season.
see. The scary thing is that the playoffs might not run through Lambeau for them this year, and that scares me because, and it should scare Packers fans because when it goes through Lambeau, a lot harder to go there and win. Um, so we'll see.
Definitely. Jags Colts, you predicted that one right. The Colts were the first time I think this season actually looked like they were clicking on offense. Defense, there's still some patchwork, but offense, like, I mean, they were moving the ball that whole game. So, if they can keep that up, maybe they can actually, do something in their division. I don't know how stacked the AFC is if they actually like genuinely are going to make the playoffs. Obviously, they'll have to win the division to do that, and the Titans are, a formidable opponent. But it was just nice to see them actually make something happen. Massive improvement from that Denver game a week prior.
Yeah, the Colts are one of those teams that if they can figure things out, similar to Green Bay, I mean, they have a chance to be pretty good. I picked the Colts because I just thought that it's hard to beat the same team twice, especially in a short amount of time. And the Colts made the adjustments that they needed to, and they came out with a win, and that's big for them in the division moving forward. Obviously, that's going to be a competitive division. All those teams are within reach of competing and winning it. So that's a big win. Anytime you play a divisional game, obviously it's a big win. But good for them to get that one, and hopefully it's a spark to kind of get on the right path. It's 2 wins in a row for them, and we'll see what they do with it.
Absolutely. So now moving on to this Vikings Dolphins game. First of all, with the way the Dolphins started, I'm very surprised that they're 3-3. And obviously it makes sense because of their quarterback injury situation. And I just got to say, Dolphins fans for the past 2 years have just been doing nothing but saying, just not giving Tua the benefit of the doubt, right? Not giving him time to develop, acting like this dude needs to be a stud coming right out of the gate, giving him all sorts of shit, saying they need to move on from him. The list goes on, right? There's been a lot of Tua drama over the past 2 years. This dude gets hurt, and the Dolphins look like a completely different team. And it's hilarious because now you see all those Dolphins fans kind of flip the script. They're like, oh, we need Tua back and we'll be winning again and all that stuff. And it's like, where were you guys the past 2 years about your quarterback? You didn't have faith in him. In some ways, it kind of echoes how, well, Bills fans are a lot more positive and less toxic of a fan base, I'd say. But, Bills fans didn't really give Josh Allen the benefit of the doubt and didn't really want to give him time to develop. And say similar things about Jalen Hurts. And I think the message I want to convey with this is just like, it takes time to become a good quarterback in the NFL. Nobody out of college is really just going to be a stud in year one, unless you have you're coming into a really, really good organization and program. I mean, it is arguably the hardest job in sports. The amount of reads you need to make, the amount of quick decisions you need to make, the leadership aspect that goes into it. And then on top of it, you have to be the best athlete on the field. It is no easy task. And I think that, Tua is 100% a very huge factor in that Dolphins organization. And you're seeing it with how they're playing without him right now. With that being said, also, Thompson did really well until he got hurt and eventually got replaced by Teddy Bridgewater. There was one drive in that game where they had 4 or 5 penalties in a row, and they would be a 20-yard gain called back. So then they were second and 25, and then it was another 25-yard gain, and it was called back, and they were third and 35 at one point due to the penalties. But with Thompson, they were moving the ball too, which I thought was interesting. So that's my long spiel about that game. I apologize, but I had thoughts, so it was a little fired up there.
Well, I mean, it's good. It's good points. When your starting quarterback goes down, you're in that situation. It's a hard thing to do, man. It's a hard thing to have the next man up as a quarterback, right? You can kind of fill in some spots at other positions usually, but quarterback's one of those things. It's pretty hard to replace your guy, and Tua's their guy, and it's hard to replace him. But give Minnesota some credit. Like you said, they're 5-1. Kirk is 1:00 game master. He's gonna show out at 1:00 when not everybody's watching a primetime game, but in his primetime games he hasn't been great. But he does very well at those 1:00 games. They continue to win. And these close games, man, it's the Vikings just seem to always be in these close games no matter what. And he seems to thrive in those moments. And having the passing attack they do and having the receivers they do in those moments is why they can kind of hang around and compete with anybody. And that's makes them a dangerous team against anybody in the league. And that kind of leads into the next game with the Bengals. And that's kind of how the Bengals are too. You have Joe Burrow as your quarterback. You have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Boyd, all these weapons mixed in the backfield, all these guys that you can use as an offense. And if you get behind, you can come from behind and win. And Cincinnati continued to fight to come out on top. And what we should have known and why I picked him, and John should have known better. I mean, he's, a Louisiana, football fan here in the last few years, but Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase own that city, man. They are LSU. And, Joe Burrow is my offensive player of the week for that reason. He went in there. You saw him before the game wearing Jamar's college jersey. It kind of reminded me of what John might look like taking the ACT when he wears my jersey walking in there. But, that's what it is, man. Those guys are brothers. And when you have a connection like that and, going into Louisiana and doing what they do, we should have known better. I mean, I picked him, and I should have put all the money I have on the Bengals to go into that stadium and win. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah, and the Saints were desperate for a win though, and I thought that's why they were able to pull it out. At the same time, finally we have a decent Thursday night football matchup this week with them playing the Cardinals, and I do think they will win that one because the Cardinals have shown a lot of weakness. But you're right, Mark. I mean, Joe and Jamar, that was a homecoming to them, 100%. And draw parallels, but our dynamic. You and I were quite the academic duo. I remember taking your dad's anatomy class, and just crushing out on every assignment and every lab. I'm really proud to represent that dynamic duo once again, taking the ACT and reliving those high school memories. So Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Jon and Mark, similar dynamic going on there for sure. But yeah, as a Saints fan, I mean, man, this has just been a really, really, really tough season. I feel like they've had so many opportunities to win. I don't think they're playing bad football. Defensively, they're definitely hanging in there against good talent. And even offensively, it's they're down all 3 of their receivers and they're still able to move the ball pretty well. So it's frustrating. Hopefully with the team a little healthier and making some adjustments. Obviously, this is Dennis Allen's first year as head coach there. Usually, first year head coaches have a better second half of the season than they do the first. I'm hoping that is the case. I haven't, especially with the way the NFC South is right now, I haven't completely lost faith that, the Saints are out of it. I think the NFC in general is still wide open. Just to, for teams to kind of keep their playoff hopes alive. So we'll see what happens, but disappointing loss. Moving on to Ravens Giants. Look, I still don't think the Giants are that good of a team, but I just think the Ravens cannot win games. They'll win their first three quarters, like it's no problem, and then for whatever reason, they just find ways to beat themselves in the fourth quarter. And it's crazy to me how consistent that has been, that they've just looked absolutely dominant for 45 minutes, and in the last 15, everything falls apart.
It's Lamar, dude. I mean, part of the blame is on Lamar Jackson, and I've said this before. I mean, Joe said it, Sven said it when he came on our podcast a few episodes ago. He does so many things well, and he's this electric player that people love to watch. And when it's clicking, it's clicking. But there's certain things that he struggles to do. There's certain things, there's certain moments, certain game situations that he doesn't really do well in. And we've seen this time and time again in the league. I don't know, man. It just seems like there's these games that when they start to struggle in the passing game, it isn't easy, and he has to go to his second, third progression, or he has to discuss, when they do something different on defense and it starts to work, he starts to struggle and panic, right? And he'll turn the ball over. He'll make, like Joe said, he'll have one really bad interception, a week that can really change the game. And the Giants, give them credit, they just keep finding ways to win games. Nobody saw this coming, and a first-year head coach. They don't really have any weapons that they brought in. I mean, Saquon's playing well, but we knew he was going to play well, right? We knew Saquon was going to be Saquon. I mean, they're winning these games with Daniel Jones at quarterback and a young defense, and they don't have any star weapons on the outside that help make Danny Jones's job any easier. They're just winning football games, finding ways to do it. Well-coached team that seems to be playing together and enjoying it. Give them credit, right? I mean, the Ravens are a good football team no matter what. And Lamar's a good player no matter what. There's obviously some issues that can happen, but that's an impressive win. And to be the New York Giants and to be the New York Jets and to be 4-2 and 5-1, didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, and I mean, New York fans got to be fired up because it's the first time there's been some winning football in recent memory there. So, and another thing with this too, I think just maybe an interesting conversation piece. Are either of these quarterbacks with their teams next year?
I wouldn't pay Lamar, and I know that's not a very popular opinion, but I would not pay Lamar. I would trade him, or obviously you're going to have to pay him if you want to keep him, but someone's going to pay him. But I wouldn't pay him, and Daniel Jones for sure would not pay him.
And look, I get that Deshaun Watson broke the quarterback market, but I don't think that that price tag is going to be the norm because I mean, look at what teams are doing that have paid that price tag, right?
Someone will pay Lamar that close to that number, John.
Somebody will. No, somebody will, because there's more desperate teams out there. But what I'm trying to say is Broncos swung incredibly big on Russell Wilson, and it did not work out for them. We will see if Watson works out for the Browns, but I honestly think that Watson is not going to be the same player that he was with the Texans. I think it's been 2 years off from football. You're going to be rusty. I think, all those off the field issues are going to follow him for the rest of his life. And chemistry is such an important part of this game. And I just don't think the locker room buy-in is going to be, great with that guy as your quarterback. So it's what is this genuinely the model that every team wants to have going forward? There's definitely a place for it. There's definitely guys that deserve, that price tag. I think, guys like Justin Herbert or
Mahomes, Allen.
Mahomes, Allen, they all deserve that price tag. But, guys were they have not totally proved that they are the deciding factor on winning or losing. It's a little bit tougher to make that statement. So I guess we'll see what happens with them. And then Daniel Jones, it's tough because you're probably going to have to pay him more than you want to pay him. And I don't think he's worth it. I mean, sure, it's not going to be $200 million or anything crazy like that. But I'm curious to see what his future is now that the Giants are winning, right? Are people going to start attributing that success to Jones's play? Or are they going to try to go replace him with, better talent? So,
Yeah, I mean, well, it's going to be something that we have to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely surprising to see those teams doing well, and some of the teams. I mean, the NFL is full of surprises as we go into this next game. I mean, the Steelers taking care of Tampa Bay, and you can just see the frustrations coming out of Tom Brady and the clips of him yelling at his offensive line. And I mean, it's just, me and John kind of predicted this before the season even started with him missing time in camp. And this is obviously before we knew what was happening with his family life, but something's not right there. He's not all the way in. And it's obviously, if your quarterback's not all the way in, no matter how great you are, no matter what you've done in the past, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's every season is different. Every team is different. And this Tampa Bay Bucks team is not the same that we've seen before. This Tom Brady is not the same we've seen before. And it's starting to show. And we had our concerns going into the season. It's showing. But all these upsets, man, this is the NFL, man. They're any given Sunday. Some of these scores, you'd be like, you look at this and be like, what? Like this is, what are you talking about here? Like this is not what, obviously you or I picked to happen this week. And this can happen any given week. And it just so happened that a lot of these games, these upsets happen in the same week. And that's just how it can go in the NFL. I mean, all these teams are really, really good with really, really good players and intense, smart coaches. And if you don't prepare, and it just seems like some of these favored teams maybe went in with thinking, hey, we're going to get it done because we're just going to get it done. And
right.
that doesn't work.
And I don't know if you know this, but Brady was not present on Saturday because he was attending a wedding as well. And, kind of the talk of the town has been like, we get it, Tom Brady, like you're one of the greatest football players of all time. You've won more championships than probably anybody else will ever. But as you said, every season's different. And like for you to be missing time and then coming in and screaming at your offensive line after you were the guy that wasn't showing up to practice. I mean, Mark, obviously you went to college level. I played high school football, but it doesn't matter what level it is. If you're not showing up to practice, that's not a good look, right? If I didn't show up to walk through, I probably was not going to play on Friday. If you didn't show up to walk through, you probably would miss time on Friday.
Yeah,
Like
it's just,
it's
John,
it.
I mean, it's as simple as this. And this is, I really think the root of the problem. In New England, for all those years, Tom Brady, no matter how many rings they had won, how many games in a row they were winning, no matter how many MVPs, no matter how many records he was breaking, he was never bigger than the team. Belichick never allowed him. He coached him the same as any other player. A undrafted rookie was treated the same way as 15-year vet Tom Brady was treated. And that's why they stayed good for as long as they did. And that dynasty will probably never be touched as the best NFL dynasty of all time. He comes to Tampa, and they were good that first year because he had a chip on his shoulder and he was still playing with the same pissed off underdog edge. That was why he was great for so long. He gets a taste of the glory on his own. He gets kind of a little more control of that franchise. I mean, he's basically making. I mean, he changed who the coach was. You don't think that he didn't have a role in that? You don't think he didn't have a role in bringing Antonio Brown there and bringing some of these other guys in. And he had too much control. He has too much say, and he gets more treatment, positive treatment than the rest of the team. And I don't care who you are in any sport, if you're the best player on the team and you get treated like you're better than everybody else by coaches, by owners, by your peers, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work. It doesn't click. You have to be great and you have to be humble. And Tom Brady has done that his whole career. And this year and a little bit of last year, he hasn't been.
Yeah.
He's been bigger than everything else that's there, and that's not working.
And I remember even a year ago, Colin Cowherd saying this exact same thing, where it's like, Belichick, it's boring, it's business, it's a stable ship, right? You kept in your lane, you got a job to do, and then Tampa, it's a different vibe down there, right? It's like it's Florida, it's party, it's fun, it's all of this stuff, and it's like that. Without that structure, right? Brady is somebody that thrives with a lot of structure, and
Yeah.
I don't think that exists to nearly the same level in Tampa that it did in New England, which is why the success is a lot harder to sustain. yes, you won that Super Bowl. That hangover is definitely showing now. So, moving on to
Speaking of
sorry, go
hangovers,
ahead. Yeah,
speaking of hangovers, the Rams, dude. I mean, and you can blame the hangover a little bit of their success, but really what's happening is Matt Stafford is getting exposed for who he is, right? And the team still loaded with talent. Obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, missing Odell Beckham Jr., missing kind of a running game. Their offensive line is definitely a tier down than they were last year. But Matthew Stafford and what they're paying him and what they're expecting him to be and why they brought him there was to kind of overcome any little issues that they're having. And they don't have any big issues in LA. Let's make that clear. They don't have any big issues. They don't have issues like some of these other teams we're talking about. They're just not playing to the standard that they're capable of playing to. And Matthew Stafford, in specific, is playing bad football. I mean, he's making some bad throws. He threw a pick six this week. I think he still leads the league in interceptions. I mean, it's just inexcusable stuff that he's doing. And then you compound that with some blown, defenses by Jalen Ramsey early on, right? Kind of guys doing their own thing. Obviously, like I said, struggling to establish a running game, offensive line being weaker. You compile all that stuff together, and you have a team that's struggling to beat the Panthers, who just fired their coach last week.
and they're
You
probably the
know,
worst team in the league, and
I
will
mean,
be the
the
worst team in the
Panthers are
league.
dysfunctional. I mean, they cut Robbie Johnson, or I'm sorry,
Robbie
what's his
Anderson.
name, Robbie Anderson, basically in the middle of the game for whatever, getting an argument with the coach, and they sent him to the locker room, traded him the next day to
Yeah.
Arizona. So clearly they're dysfunctional in Carolina. I mean, and that score, I mean, that was a close game for the entirety of the game. And yeah, I mean, 24-10 is like, oh, they won by 2 possessions. Well, yeah, but I mean, it
No,
was a
if
close
you
game.
watch that game, it was
You
like,
were worried.
oh
I mean,
wow.
it was a close game if you were rooting for the Rams. So I put a lot of blame on Matthew Stafford, right? And I put a lot of blame on them for not figuring this out sooner because I mean, they're starting to run out of time. And listen, for Detroit fans, awesome. This is what we want to see happen. We want to see them start to fall apart. We want to see them not do well because we'll take the better draft pick any day.
Yeah, and is it this year that we also get that second rounder from
I
them as
believe I,
well?
be, I believe so.
So yeah, definitely interesting stuff. And yeah, like I mean, personally, I was happy to see Stafford go and win a Super Bowl. And it's honestly icing on the cake now that they're falling apart this year, in my opinion. And they do not look like a Super Bowl caliber team by any stretch of the
They're not.
imagination this year. It's not even close. And again, this is with a wide open NFC where really no team, with the exception of the Eagles, who we got a lot to talk about there, is really showing to be dominant on in that entire conference. And even then, I'd still say that the Rams, it'd be a long shot for them to even go on a deep playoff run. They're just not with it. Any good defense is going to pick Stafford and that offensive line and that running game apart, period.
It's
It's too
honestly, John.
predictable.
I
It's
mean,
way too predictable.
it's honestly embarrassing. Like when you look at the Rams on paper and you look at their roster, you have Jalen Ramsey, who's probably the best player in football at his position. You have Aaron Donald, no doubt the best football player at that position in the league. And then you have Bobby Wagner, arguably the best football player in the league at that position, all on the same defense. You have Cooper Kupp, who top two, maybe top receiver in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball. And they have Matthew Stafford, who most people would argue is a top 10, top 8 quarterback in the league. And I mean, they're just not doing what they're capable of doing. And I mean, there's a lot of people to blame. I blame Matthew Stafford. A lot of people will blame the coaches. I mean, that's inexcusable, dude. You put those guys on the Detroit Lions. I mean, I'd be clapping my hands. I'd be so excited. I'd probably buy season tickets.
Yeah, and I do think it's a mixture of a few things, right? Because one thing that's very true is you cannot fix an offensive line midseason. It is very, very difficult to do. You can address problem areas with free agents and practice squad and stuff like that, and a lot of other positions, but offensive line is not one of those positions. That entire unit kind of has to stick together like glue the whole season, and you got what you got going in. And then on top of it, you're mentioning all the defensive talent who they shelled out a lot of bags to a lot of players in this offseason. And man, if I'm coming off a Super Bowl, a really long season, really tough trek to get there, and then, oh, you're paying me all this money to stick around when I'm Aaron Donald and I'm thinking about retiring, right? It's the mentality changes a little bit. And I think that that's kind of revealing itself. And honestly, I mean, the Rams defense has hung in there with most of the teams that they've played, but I do think that just like as we're kind of talking about with Tampa, it's like those little mentality adjustments really do make a difference when it comes to just how productive and how efficient a team is week to week. So
Yeah.
definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. Seahawks, I think, have shocked everybody with how well they've hung in there in a rebuilding year. I mean, Geno Smith's still
I mean,
playing
they
good
don't even
ball.
look
It's
like they're
like,
rebuilding, dude. They're competing with everybody, And Geno Smith is one of those guys that no one saw coming, and he's playing with, like, again, with an edge, with a chip on his shoulder, and he's trying to prove all these people wrong that never gave him a shot for most of his career. And Kyler Murray, I mean, should they have paid him? I
it's the
There's a
big
lot of
question.
people that were hesitant about that. I had my hesitations with it. I think my final thing was like, you have to pay him because it's hard to find a guy better than that. But man, I mean, it's becoming close, and closer than people think. Like,
And the new Call of Duty hasn't even dropped yet, right? Like they're in trouble,
just
man.
wait till that happens, right?
um, yeah, I mean, I'm impressed with the Seahawks. And I was wrong about them, and like I'll admit that I was wrong. I was wrong about Pete Carroll's decision making. I was wrong about how they're kind of building the future of that organization, and I sure as hell was wrong about Russell Wilson not being the problem there. Because man, like they really like robbed the Broncos. Like, and we
Well, and
touched on this last week. They robbed them.
this is what I've started to notice, John, and I'm going to jump to the Denver game, and then we can go back to the two
Sure.
probably best
Yeah,
games of the
the
weekend.
game's the most worth
Um,
talking about. Sure.
But this is what I'm seeing, and this is kind of what I've dissected of what's happening with this Russell Wilson trade and what Seattle got for it. Seattle got a lot for this trade, right? And they're doing better than the Broncos are right now, and no one saw that coming. But what I think the issue is Russell Wilson in that Pete Carroll system reminds me of, like, what I said earlier about Tom Brady in the New England system. He fit that mold. He fit that recipe that they were trying to do. Play really good defense, have badasses all around that are going to play tough physical football with a very tough home environment crowd. You're going to run the football. You're going to have play action, which makes it so much easier on the quarterback. You're going to move Russell Wilson out of the pocket and allow him to just be an athlete and make impressive throws, which he can do and still can do. And then what happens is you leave that, right? And people think, well, Russell Wilson's going to do that anywhere. I don't think that's the case. And listen, you bring in the offensive play caller that was working with Rodgers the last few years in his MVP seasons as the Broncos head coach. Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are very different players. They're very different quarterbacks. And they're trying to do in Denver what they did with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay the last few years. And it's not a fit. He's not good at these pre-snap RPOs and, deciding pre-snap where this linebacker is going to move and decide if he wants to throw a bubble or a quick slant or this or that. Like, that's not Russell Wilson. That's not who he ever was. That's not who he's going to be. And they're trying to do that in Denver. It's not working. And they're not, I mean, Hackett doesn't have another answer because it worked so well for him at Green Bay. He's stuck on that. And meanwhile, in Seattle, they're doing the same game plan, the same thing, the same winning football that they've always known. And they're doing it with a lesser talented quarterback in Geno Smith, and they're having more success. So again, it comes down to game philosophy, game planning, and what they want to do as a team, as a culture, and what's your identity going to be. And Denver doesn't have an identity offensively, and that's
No.
because they're trying to, these pieces don't fit. And I just think that's an interesting thing that's happening, and it just reminds me of that Brady situation in New England all those years. Sometimes when the right things line up, there's a great amount of success, and it's very hard to beat those teams. But when you start moving pieces and you just think, well, he was good here, so he's automatically going to be good here, it doesn't always work that way. And unfortunately, Denver's learning that the hard way, and Seattle is, smiling and saying, we lucked out of this one. I mean, we definitely are benefiting from this move.
Right. And especially at quarterback, it's such a nuanced position, right? The way the coordinator molds with the quarterback, like you were just referencing. And then there's just so many nuances with their particular skill sets. So yeah, just to say that you can, just take this guy from this org and drop him in the other one, it's going to be the same, amount of success, the same amount of production. I mean, that's a bold assumption to make. So
And that goes for any quarter. I mean, you could put Mahomes on the Lions, and I don't know what if he would be Patrick Mahomes. Like, he's a great fit with Andy Reid, and they have a great chemistry. And Andy Reid basically said, "Screw Alex Smith," and went and got Patrick Mahomes, and it surprised a lot of people. But when you see the right connection and the right fit for you and you go and get them, and you're right, it works. But you can't just move and drop players in different situations. And just because they're good in one spot doesn't mean they're going to be good with another coach or another quarterback or another receiver. Like
Right.
that's, I think, a common misconception in the league. And so it's hard to predict trades because of that. But no one really saw this coming in Denver. I mean, I sure didn't. And I know you didn't. So this is,
I always knew
it's
they were boring, but I didn't know they were going to be bad,
it's
So
funny. It's funny to see, though, for sure. It's funny to see. And
it is. I
now
mean, Wilson makes it funny.
it's funny, man. I
I'm
mean, he
sorry.
deserves all this. Like, if anybody deserves this, like, slander, and because of how corny he is, and we've said this, I think, in every episode. This is a non Russell Wilson podcast. I mean, that is as clear as we
It
can make it.
really is. I'm sorry. I'm
I don't
sorry, any
know.
Russell Wilson's fan.
He's just the worst. He's the worst, and I don't care how talented he is. I don't care what he's done in the past. I mean, he is playing bad football, and he is continuing to piss people off with how he's carrying himself. And
Because
this
he
just,
acts
I
like a cartoon
he
character,
acts
and
like
you
he's
can't
better than
do that when you're
everybody. He acts
losing.
like he's above you morally. He acts like he's got everything figured out, and his teammates definitely see it and don't like it. His fan base doesn't like it. I don't know, man. It's funny to see, and it's enough about the bad football and the bad thing. Let's get into these last two games with the
Which were
Bills and
both
Chiefs
great,
first.
awesome
Awesome
games.
game. Not necessarily as high scoring as people thought it was going to be. I know you saw Tony Romo predicted the score exactly, like in the first quarter. Just hilarious. But I kind of agreed with him at thinking it was going to be lower scoring. I didn't guess the score. Um, but Josh Allen bested Mahomes in this game. And really, the whole game, Josh Allen and the Bills looked like they were having a more comfortable way of moving the ball than Mahomes did. I mean, it just seemed like the Chiefs were struggling a little bit more. And it's so funny to see that everybody is still playing Mahomes the same way that that Tampa team played him in the Super Bowl. I mean, everyone's playing the same defense. They're dropping back. They're playing two high safeties, keeping everything underneath, and they're playing man below. And it's frustrating because the Chiefs want to throw. And when you make them have to run the ball, they get impatient and they start to force it. And you saw what happened when they try to force throws at the end of the game. I mean, he threw a pick and just you don't see Mahomes do often. He threw it right to a guy that made a good play for the Bills. But this is an interesting thing, and it's a huge turner for the AFC because if these teams do what I think they're going to do and win the majority of the games, and if you're the Bills, probably win out, this AFC goes through Buffalo. And playing this Buffalo team in Buffalo with this fan base and what they believe they're able to do is scary. And I don't see anybody coming out of the AFC besides Buffalo that does stay through Buffalo in the playoffs.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, if you're KC, you got to be freaked out, right? Because that feels like, oh shit, like we're figured out by this team mid-season already. What is this going to be in the playoffs, right? They were able to luck out last season. You know that every single Buffalo fan, every single Buffalo player, every single Buffalo coach has been doing nothing but think about how they're going to beat that organization ever since that game. So, obviously, I'm sure, when these two eventually meet in the playoffs, it's going to be an insane game. But regardless, I mean, they do just truly look unstoppable, and it's super exciting to watch. I know I tease you about like how much of a fan you are of the way they play football, but it's so legit. And it's like everybody in the league is just like, wow, this team is something else. They're
John, I'm
truly
telling you
something
right now,
special.
like this team is different, man. Like they are the best team in football. I mean, you can make an argument with the Eagles because they're undefeated, but the Bills are just unbelievable to watch, and everything they do, they just dominate the game. Josh Allen is playing at a level. I'll say this every episode. He's playing at a level I have not seen before from anyone. Like
Yeah.
he just is making it look stupid easy, and they're a dangerous team. That if anyone in the AFC thinks that they're going to go into Buffalo and win a playoff game in those weather conditions with that crowd, with Josh Allen running the ball and them throwing the ball all over the place, like no matter what weather conditions it is, you got another thing coming.
It's going to be nutty for sure. And also shout out to Dawson Knox for getting a touchdown in that game, big touchdown in that game, and immediately kind of tipping his hat, dedicating that to his late brother, who passed away going right into the season. Right, I think it was right
Yeah, I
before
think it
week
was
one.
during fall camp. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, listen, it's so special. Like football can do incredible things, and like on a real note, that the adversity that dude was facing, losing his younger brother, and I can't even imagine, right? Like what he's going through. But then it's just amazing what football and having teammates and having something bigger than you can do to kind of distract you and kind of pull you back towards, some sort of a normal life or a happy life after something as tragic as that happens. And then a moment like that, I mean, it's just like, I mean, it's almost like you wrote it in a book, dude. Him catching the game ended up being the game-winning touchdown against the Chiefs in an absolutely huge moment. I mean, instantly pointing up to the sky, just like it's awesome, and that's why football is loved by so many people because it connects on so many different levels. I mean, just because it's entertaining, but there's an emotional connection to the sport, and it becomes something so much bigger than a game. And that's what people that really love football, like you and I do, but even people that don't love the game can maybe see and be like, okay, now I get why people watch this every Sunday and why this is so important to so many people. And it's stuff like that. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you just love to see in the sport, and it's awesome. It's awesome to see.
Absolutely. And then, moving on to the second, just super exciting matchup was the Cowboys Eagles. Eagles only undefeated team in the league still. And not only that, but man, their defensive performance in this game was incredible. And yes, I know that, defense is Dallas's strong suit, not necessarily their offense, but their offense has been plenty productive and efficient for these games with Cooper Rush at the helm, and the Eagles just shut it down. CJ Gardner Johnson, previous Saint, is my defensive player of the week. He got 2 interceptions in this game. And man, I was heartbroken when the Saints traded him away for basically nothing. And I thought it was a bad move in the first place because I know how effective of a player he was with the Saints and how he was kind of just the glue that held all of that together. It's like their entire, defensive backcourt matched with their defensive line is super scary. It's going to, cause a lot of disruption all over the league for the rest of the season, as long as that group can stay healthy. So I think this was, a great matchup. I think the Cowboys are still a pretty dang good team with a dang good defense, but that was the Eagles game, and they dominated on defense.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with you. The Eagles were the better team, and they got up early, and Dallas made a late push and kind of gave themselves a chance, which was awesome to see. But the Eagles eventually, put their foot down and finished them off. But you're right. I mean, the Eagles up front on the defensive side of the ball mixed with their secondary is a dangerous combination. And then offensively, their ability to run the ball, and they have weapons in the passing game. And Jalen Hurts is a dual threat guy who just seems comfortable in this offense, and it just seems to be fitting, what they want to do with what he's able to do physically, and it just seems to be clicking. And you know, I'm worried that the Eagles are peaking, and I've said this a few times, and I keep getting proved wrong, but I'm not sure that this is going to be that they're going to be able to hold on to this dominance. I'm just worried that some of these defenses are going to start to kind of figure out what they're doing offensively. And yeah, I'm less worried about the Eagles defense than I am about their offense. I think their offense has some flaws that could come to here pretty soon. And they've kind of showed everything that they have here early on to the 6-0 start. They'll definitely be a playoff team. They'll definitely be a team that's kind of right around there. But again, I'm going to stick with it. I don't think the Eagles win a playoff game. I just have,
Wow.
a gut feeling.
I
I
mean,
just
you
still
could you could like make that take so easily with like so little pushback against a team like the Giants.
right,
But
but
you're
I
digging
just
your
think
heels in with the Eagles.
I
All
think
right.
it's the Eagles, dude. I
All
think
right.
the
All
Eagles are
right.
going to just struggle in the playoffs, and I think the Giants won't even make the playoffs. So
Interesting stuff here. Well, that is a recap for this past week, week 6. We're gonna move on to our predictions for next week. Um Saints versus Cardinals. I gotta go Saints here. This game's on my birthday. I would like a Saints win for my birthday, so hopefully I
oh
can manifest that here on the podcast. Either way, I'm sure it's gonna be a good time, a better viewing experience than our past 2 weeks of Thursday night football. So at the very least, I'm thankful for
John, I'm worried that your birthday's not going to go as planned, buddy.
that.
I'm
uh,
gonna go with the Cardinals. You're forgetting somebody that might spoil your birthday. His name is DeAndre Hopkins, and he's back this week, and he's joining the Cardinals. And they just got um, Robbie Anderson as well. I'm not sure, man. The Cardinals are kind of, both these teams are in a must win, but I'm going to go with the Cardinals at home. They get their best player back. It's going to be really, really helpful for Kyler, and he needs to kind of get his groove going here. And what better way to do that than add one of the top guys in the league, throw the ball to, and then another top guy in the league, throw the ball to, against the Saints team that's been struggling against the pass. So
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll have to see what the injury report for the Saints receiver core is too, because that crew is, I don't think, been together since week 1 or 2 at this point. I think, I don't know what Thomas is looking like. I don't know if Winston's going to be back or not. I believe they will get Chris Olave back, so we'll see what happens there. Browns Ravens. Look, I know I've been burnt, picking the Ravens more than a few times over this season, but I think a divisional game, I'm probably going to go Ravens here. Hopefully they just play 4 quarters worth of football, right? Again, this team is unstoppable for 3 quarters every single game, and they just can't win it. So let's just hope that they're able to kind of fix that and figure out how to finish a freaking football game.
yeah, I'm going with the Ravens too. I think that, yeah, we've talked about the issues and concerns about the Ravens. In this game, I think they'll get up early and they'll do what they do best, and that's win those kind of games, right? Like that's what they'll do against Cleveland. Cleveland's very hit or miss this year. Going into Baltimore coming off of a loss is going to get it done, in my opinion.
Taking a look at Bucks Panthers. Look, we know the Bucks have had their struggles, but they're about to play just like a corpse of a football team at this point. So I'm gonna go
How does
Bucks
Tom
here.
Brady, like, he finds ways? I mean, obviously, all those years he played in the worst division of football, like with Miami and the Jets just stinking and the Bills stinking for a long time. But he somehow moves divisions, and that becomes the worst division around him. I mean, the Saints are struggling. The Panthers are the worst team in football, and
Right.
Miami looked good in the beginning, but I mean, not so much anymore with quarterback struggles. So, you know, that's just tough. Like that's a tough thing for Tampa, um, to try to have a way to come out of this on top, at the end of the year. But I'll say this: the Panthers are one of those times that you don't have to worry. That you just go into the game and just say, okay, well, we're going to show up, and Tom Brady. I don't care if he goes to 3 weddings this week. You play the Panthers and what they're struggling. Like I don't know if they even have to practice. I'll be honest. Like the Panthers are, you know,
Yeah. They can take a team
struggling.
trip to Cedar Point or something like that,
Yeah,
just hang out up there, a little team building
I
experience. He can hang out with his offensive line, buy him some ice cream, that kind of
yeah.
situation.
Although I mean, I will say like the Falcons, we thought they'd be bad in that division, and we'll give them some credit.
They're playing better for sure,
They've been
but
better than we think. But whatever. Tom Brady just somehow finds ways to play in bad divisions, and it's they'll probably be a playoff team no matter how bad they play. That's the thing that bugs me.
Mark, I'm personally very thankful that, despite our disagreements, we are both Tom Brady skeptics, and I get a lot of hate from a lot of people for being a Tom Brady skeptic, especially if you're over the age of 40. I feel like you're not allowed to talk poorly on Tom Brady.
Listen, I
Um,
love Tom Brady and I respect everything he's done in his career, but right now, like I mean, I'm not gonna just like continue to blow smoke for no reason. Like he's not
right.
doing well. Like
Yep.
I'm not gonna just say, if someone else, I don't care who it is, if Josh Allen started performing badly, I'm not gonna continue to just say he's so good. I give respect where it's due and I give hate where it's due. And it just so
And
happens that usually hate is what is more earned in this league, you know?
yeah, and
Sorry.
look, it's a new era for quarterbacks, and we just have to admit that. I mean, I have maintained for a long time that I think Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Tom Brady, despite the fact that he doesn't have as many Super Bowl rings to show it. But even then, Rodgers' era is kind of over too, right? We got new guys at the helm. Simple as that. Moving on, Falcons Bengals. I think the Bengals win this one at home. Falcons have been playing good football, so I don't think it's necessarily like just an easy win that they can kind of go on autopilot for. But I think the Bengals are kind of back in that rhythm. They're looking a lot better than they were at the beginning of the season. The offensive line isn't allowing Joe Burrow to get sacked like a trillion times. Instead it's only like a million times. But Joe Burrow can make that work. So I'm gonna go Bengals
Yeah,
here.
I'm gonna go with the Bengals too. They've started to figure out offensively what they want to do. They finally got Jamar back involved in the game plan, and that's not a good sign for Atlanta. So I'm gonna go with the Bengals to just kind of figure it out and put it together for another win.
Yeah. Um, Uh,
Don't even think about it. What you're
I
about to
just
do right now.
I just hope that it's a competitive game. I'll just
It's
leave
not
it at
gonna
that.
be. It's not gonna be.
I'll just leave it at that.
It's not
I
gonna be.
I am so disappointed with how the season has gone for them. It's and again, like the roster's more talented this year, so there's less excuses there. Um, it's Campbell's second year. I'm kind of shocked that they are 1-4 at this point in the
So are
season.
you
And now
picking Dallas?
I'm picking Dallas. Yes.
Oh,
It's just
thank God.
to me,
Thank
it's
God I
just
don't have to. I
I
don't have
just
to
I just want
destroy
to
you.
man, this is the type of game that the Lions will then go out and win and we'll both look stupid. But
No, it's not. Listen, Dallas, think about John, just use your you have a huge brain. All right, your head's the size of a watermelon. You got a huge brain. Use it and think matchups here, okay? Just like
the matchups is why you'd be inclined to think
no,
the
no,
Lions have
no.
a chance
Listen,
here. No, you listen. You have their Dallas's strong suit is their defense, and the Lions have a great offensive line and can make things work there. However, I still think Dallas is going to win this game. I'm not going to kid
Dallas
myself.
is gonna make our offensive line look like the worst in the league. That's what's gonna happen. We have not seen a pass rush like this in Dallas in an away game yet this year. We couldn't even block New England, okay? And they have one guy in Matthew Judon. Dallas is bringing all kinds of guys. We're not going to be able to throw the ball. We're going to be under pressure, and not to mention Dallas on offense is getting Dak back. He's going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder because of how well Cooper. I mean, these guys are competitors. He's not going to just show up and think it's my spot. He's going to go and earn it again, and he's going to use Detroit as like a towel to wipe up all the blood and tears and stuff that he's been dealing with the last few weeks, and he's going to throw it in the trash. And that's what the Lions are going to be: is a towel, a blood
Uh,
and tear towel. That's what
all
they're going to
right.
be.
All
It's
right,
gonna be
Mark.
bad.
Okay,
It's gonna
buddy.
be bad.
All right. Moving on to Giants Jags. I'm going to go Jags here. I think it's finally time that the Giants get a little bit of a wake up call. The Jags are kind of sneaky good. They can compete. They can play ball. I'm gonna go Jags.
I'm also gonna go Jags, and I'm with you. I think that New York is they can't go 6-1, right? I mean, that's what I'm thinking. That's what you're thinking. I'm worried that they will,
I was about to say they could go six and
but
one,
I don't
but
want them to go 6-1. I don't think they're good. You don't think they're good. I'm gonna go with the Jags, and I'm hoping the Jags show up like they play against the Colts in Jacksonville. That's what I'm hoping.
right in Duval. Colts Titans. I'm gonna go Titans here. This is gonna be a fun game though because I think the Colts are playing a little bit better. Also, haven't the Colts and the Titans already played each other? What's up with
Yeah,
this
this is so
division?
weird.
What is
It's
up
so
with this
weird.
division? Like, why
I
is
don't know.
everybody in the AFC South just like,
They've
all
already
right, let's
played each
all
other.
play each other as quickly as possible? Very
I'm
weird.
gonna go with the Colts, John,
Cool.
and for a few reasons. One, the Colts already played against Tennessee, and it was a close game, and Tennessee came out on top. Again, hard to beat the same team twice. Same logic I
Yep.
used last week for the Colts and the Jags. But also, the Titans are coming off a bye week, and there's two things that can happen when coming off a bye week. You're either very prepared and you come out and dominate, or you come out and you're a little bit, kind of like
Sluggish.
hungover and a little
Kind of get hit
rusty
in the
and
mouth.
sluggish. And
Yep.
I think they'll come out a little bit sluggish in this one. So for those two reasons, I'm picking the Colts.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me. It's kind of 50-50, and you make some very sound arguments, but I'm going to stay with Titans just for the sake of us being, disagreeing on something. Packers Commanders. Hey, time for Rodgers to at least pad that record a little bit while they still try to figure out what the hell they need to do to actually win some games
If
down
they
the
lose
stretch
this
here.
game, they're dead.
It's
If
straight
the
up.
Packers lose this game,
Absolutely.
they are dead because this
I don't
is
care that it's at FedEx. That doesn't count as a home
it
game.
doesn't even
Anybody that's
count. And
been to that
also,
stadium, it's a dump.
have you seen the news? They're trying to get Snyder out. Like the other owners are kind of starting to plot against him and find out like they don't want him as an owner in the NFL anymore.
Snyder sent out a letter today being like, "Hey, that ESPN article like wasn't real. Like we're all buds. Like I like you guys. Like we're
We're
all
all
friends, right?
friends, like you know what I mean. So
Please don't kick me out."
he's it's like an exclusive club that's very hard to get kicked out of once you're in because you have so much money. Like I mean, not many owners have been like
You have
voted
to be
out
a
by the.
complete turd
You
of a
have to be
human being.
terrible, dude. Because
Yeah.
again, like they are very exclusive in who they let in, but once you're in, you're in. And very rarely in history have we seen owners get treated like this, but he deserves it. And Green Bay, I'm picking the Packers. I know you're picking the Packers. If they don't win this game, they are dead. They're in
Yeah,
serious trouble.
absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Jets at Broncos. Man, I gotta go Jets here after that performance last week. And look, I hold so much contempt for the way Broncos play football and what they have put me through in prime time. So many times this season. And I think we still have 3 or 4 primetime games left with the Broncos this season. So if nothing else but spite, and on top of the fact the Jets are playing good football, I'm going Jets.
I'm gonna pick Denver, and I mean, I hate it. I mean, I feel like kind of nauseous even saying this right now. But I'm gonna pick Denver because they are in a need it situation more than New York is, and that's obviously surprising to see these two teams at this point in the season and saying that the Broncos are in a more must win situation. But yeah, I'm gonna pick Denver. I don't think the Jets are great. I mean, they're a good team. I think Denver is going to be able to figure them out on defense and give Zach Wilson some problems. And I just think that they'll do enough on defense to win the game. But I'm not going to give any credit to dangerous Mr. Unlimited Wilson.
Unlimited.
That
Dude, such a
dude's
cool tagline. I want to put that on a shirt for sure.
that's his alter ego is I'm unlimited. Yeah, unlimited losses, loser. But not this week. I'm picking Denver.
Unlimited Jesus tweets that do not equate to winning football games as much as he thinks they do.
This week it will. He'll have the right tweet this week. I guarantee it.
Jesus will answer his prayer just this time around.
Just this week.
So Texans Raiders. This is tough, man. I mean, I'm sorry, Troy, but I gotta give it to the Raiders here. I just think that is the most frustrated team in all of the NFL right now, and I would be kind of scared to play them after a bye week going into this. Right, both teams are coming off of byes, but like you saw how they reacted to that loss there. I think that they are ready to murder whoever. Doesn't matter who is on the other side of the ball. They are an angry team right now, and I wouldn't want to mess with them.
I agree completely. The Raiders are the most dangerous team in football this week. And it's simply because of that frustration and because of the fact that they're a very good football team with a bad record. And they're in a situation where they know they need to come out with a couple wins here in a row and get this thing back on the right track. And the Texans, and the interesting thing is both these teams coming off of byes, which is kind of an interesting dynamic to see. So, I mean, expect them both to be pretty well prepared. I think it's just going to be the team that handled the bye week better, right? Who's going to come out sluggish and who's going to come out prepared?
Right.
One of these teams is going to be ready to go, and one of these teams is going to come out sluggish. I think the Raiders will be the more prepared team just because they have the most reason to be pissed off. I sure as hell wouldn't be enjoying my bye week if I was in Vegas right now.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, it's crazy. I feel like this has been the story of the Raiders my entire life of just like slumping in the early season, all sorts of adversity, like suffering losses in some of the craziest ways you've ever seen. And then, like, this is around the time where they turn it around and they start winning games. And you're like, who even is this team? Right. And usually that ends with them kind of choking away a playoff berth or something like that. I guess that's yet to be determined, but it
I
definitely
think
makes
they'll
it seem
make the
tough there.
playoffs. By the way,
I think they will too. I definitely think they will. I think that team's too talented for them not to. Um, Moving on to Seahawks Chargers, I'm assuming your pick here is going to be Chargers, but I think it'll be a good game. Obviously, Seahawks have shown more times than not now that they can hang with just about any team. And look, Chargers need to start putting it together. I know they're 4-2, but there's been a lot of chinks in the armor, and they need to, kind of make sure that they're tightening up some of those problems that they're having and getting a little bit more of a rhythm with stuff. So Herbert
yeah,
feeling a little healthier. We'll see.
I'm gonna pick the Chargers, but I'm worried, man. I had the Chargers one of my Super Bowl teams. I had them and the Bills as my two favorites overall, and obviously in the AFC. They don't look that way, and I know they have a few guys banged up, and Keenan Allen and Boza need to get back, and they're a very different team with those two guys back in the lineup. But it's no excuse. I mean, you still are loaded all over the place. And what I'm really disappointed to see is they really invested in their defense and the secondary and their defensive line, and they're just not playing great defensively. I mean, even the Broncos scored a touchdown on them. I mean, that can't happen, right? Like,
Easily.
so I just am
Thank
worried about their
thank God that that
defense.
game wasn't an absolute snooze fest, though. Like,
Well, I
I
mean,
think you
Herbert struggled, and I get
yeah,
Denver has a good defense, but I'm waiting to see Justin Herbert play like he did against Kansas City. I mean, that was exciting stuff. I know he's
right.
capable of it. He's done it his whole, young career here. He's done it in almost every game we've seen him play. So I think this is a bounce back week for them. Even though they won, I think this is a bounce back week for them.
Did you
And
see Monday's game was the first time Herbert has not thrown a touchdown in any of his starts, and it just so happened that DraftKings boosted him as an anytime touchdown pass
right. Well,
scorer, and he
they
didn't get
listen,
it. Like,
Vegas, you got to be very careful. Anytime, this is for all gamblers out there. Anytime they do a boosted thing, do not do it because they're just trapping you into it because they already know what's
but
going to
how
happen.
did they know? How
I
did they
don't know,
know?
John. I
Time
don't know.
travel?
They know, and we
They
don't.
do.
And anytime there's a boost, don't fall for that trap. Do what I do. Follow my gambling train because I'm on a pretty good streak right now in betting on just money line college games. Doing pretty well. I won't throw out any numbers, but I'm doing pretty well this season.
Well, I'm happy to hear it. You heard it here from Mark. Just bet money line college games. That's not a
You know
bad
where to find me
strategy.
if you want. If you want to ride with Hank on these bets, that's my gambling persona is Hank.
That's better than unlimited as
Yeah,
far as an alter ego
you don't go by
goes.
Mark when you're gambling. That's my alter ego is Hank. But if you want some advice, you know where to find me.
For sure. Chiefs Niners. This is going to be an interesting game. I think. I think after last week, I think Chiefs will win this one. But man, this is tough. I'm having a like, especially since it's at San Fran. This is a tough pick for me. San Fran always plays good defense. They always play very sound defense. Uh, I'm gonna go Chiefs still though.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup, but I'm gonna go with San Francisco, and it's a toss up, right? Because both these teams are coming off of losses and they want to get back on the right track, and losing 2 games in the NFL in a row is tough. Um, but what I think is going to happen is I think San Francisco is going to match up well with Mahomes and on defense, and I think they'll get back to running the football as like the way that they want to, and San Francisco is going to be able to do that, and I think that Mahomes is going to struggle, and then the 49ers are going to maintain possession of the ball and have long drives and sustain possession long enough to keep them off the field and keep their defense fresh. And so I'm going to pick the 49ers to kind of win in a low scoring field goal type of game.
Sure. And then Steelers Dolphins. I think Tua's coming back this week, so this is an easy pick for the Dolphins for me. I think we saw a huge difference in their play with him absent the past few weeks, and I think he's going to tear it up in his game back with them.
Yeah, I'm also going to pick Miami. That's obviously only if Tua's playing. Uh, this is you have to get back on the right track for Miami. Like you started so well and everybody was giving you the praise, and then you lose both your first 2 quarterbacks of concussions, and you're starting an undrafted rookie, and it's just like kind of a disaster for Miami. But they have to get this one, and the Steelers are coming off of a huge win against Tampa, probably feeling pretty good about themselves, but going to Miami and trying to win 2 in a row is a whole different, it's a whole different thing.
Absolutely. And then Bears Patriots. I'm going Pats.
It's a boring, boring, boring primetime game, but I'm also going
Classic.
to go New England. Listen, what New England did to Detroit, we're going to see something very similar to what they're going to do to Chicago. They're going to kind of figure out Justin Fields. They're going to toy with him, make sure that they put him in tough situations, and then they're just going to play complementary football. And Bailey Zappi is going to show why he's the man.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And again, I think the Bears are really up against it for the rest of the season. All right. I mean, we are definitely mid-season. I know this particular podcast was probably a little bit more technical. We actually got more into the weeds because we haven't had a guest eating up time here. So really interesting stuff with the upsets last week. And honestly, I feel like a lot of these matchups were not super easy for me to decide this week. So, we'll see if it was as predictable, if we do end up, getting 10 or 12 right like we have, or if this is going to be another week where we kind of split on a bunch. Any last thoughts before we wrap up here, Mark?
No, man, you're right. I mean, we're in mid-season. We're gonna get some more guests on here in the coming weeks, and we're gonna continue to do what we've been doing. And again, John and I appreciate all our listeners and people that are, reaching out, commenting, sharing, doing anything like that. We appreciate it. We're having a lot of fun with it. We hope other people are too. And that's that. We're just gonna keep doing this, and this podcast is gonna get more and more exciting as the season goes, and I'm excited to see it.
Absolutely. I also noticed that I forgot to put our ticker on for this cast. So there's our socials down there. If you want to go check them out. If you made it the entire hour and 15 minutes, your reward is to go follow us on social media, or else actually you just listen to our voices for an hour and 15 minutes and you're not going to follow us on socials. You're not going to subscribe. You haven't subscribed yet and you just listen to this entire podcast. You should probably do that. So that's what I'll leave you with. There's the ticker, super fancy.
I'll do reverse psychology. Don't go and follow us just to spite John. Just like look at this ticker, look us up, look at our page, and then don't follow us.
Yeah, I mean that's my fault for not putting the ticker up at the beginning, so I would completely understand that as well.
Happens to the best of us, John.
Absolutely. Until next week, everybody. See ya.